Yep.
All right, we're live. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Victory Condition Gaming. My name is Doug. Today on the show, I am so excited. I have someone on that I'm really am just over the moon about having on here and talking about his project, Mr. James Iles from UFO Press. We're going to talk to him. We're going to talk about his Kickstarter that he has on right now. It's Legacy Life Among the Ruins Second Edition. It's just going gangbusters on Kickstarter, and I'm so excited to see this huge success that for his project. And we'll before we get into his Kickstarter, we're going to talk a little bit about James, introduce him, and talk some gaming, and then we'll talk about his project. So, James, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
You want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell folks a little bit about who you are, what you do?
Sure. So I am a game designer, of course, mostly working in the role-playing and storytelling game sort of sphere.
Nice.
So I tend to make role-playing games that are a bit more free-form than your standard D&D, alike, similar things.
Okay.
But, I mostly like making games that let people tell interesting stories together.
Absolutely.
And using just the right amount of rules to let them do that.
Nice.
So
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So do you want to give us a little bit about your background? How long?
Sure.
I mean, you're a game designer, so you're a gamer, absolutely. To start out with, how did you start getting into the gaming hobby, as we would say?
So, as a kid, I always wanted to get into Dungeons and Dragons and such. Ever since I started playing Baldur's Gate on the PC, but never really had a chance to play it until I got to university, where, as it turns out, the role-playing game group there was much more focused on live-action stuff.
Okay.
Whether it be sort of running around in a forest, hitting each other with foam weapons, or putting on costumes and talking to each other in character in a room once a week, which I was a bit uncertain about to begin with. But one thing that was really cool that they did there is every 2 or 3 times a year, they'd get an entirely new group of people, so first years or second years, and they would put together a game system and a sort of setting for their game and run that. So within a couple of terms of starting university, I was on a GM team with a few other people, putting together a game system and running people through that. Did that for about a year, and that was my introduction to game design.
Nice.
So since then, I went on to make, more traditional role-playing games with pen and paper and tabletop, card-based storytelling games, other live-action freeform games.
Okay. Yeah. Wow, very cool. And then you started UFO Press. Is that when did you start UFO Press? As far as when you started actually putting games out, officially, quote unquote.
So Legacy First Edition was my first game I actually charged money for and distributed online, and I put together UFO Press for that at the tail end of 2013, I think. It was literally because Drive-Thru RPG, which is the website I use to distribute the PDFs, asks you to put in a company name as you set up an account.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
But since then I've ran 3 different Kickstarters now under UFO Press and distributed a whole bunch of other games, and yeah.
Very cool. Well, that's great. And so let's talk a little bit about let's talk a little bit about Legacy Life Among the Ruins, your Kickstarter that's just going gangbusters. I think it's like $37,000. I think is on for US dollars. As far as last time I checked, I didn't check it before we went live, but last time I checked, it was a little over that. I don't know if that's changed at all, but that's great. I mean, it's well past the funding level that you had hoped.
Yeah, it's about $38,000 now, apparently.
Nice.
Yeah, which is like over 3 times the funding goal, and I'm over the moon. When I was a few days away from launching it, I was worried that I'd set the goal a bit too high and maybe it might not fund. So it's completely unexpected for me. Well, but I'm very happy.
There's a couple other things that I think have contributed to the success, and we'll talk about those in just a second. But let's go back to your first Kickstarter. This is actually the second edition. You kickstarted the first edition back in I think I looked it up. It was like 2014.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was successful. It did very well,
Yeah.
and so you decided to come out with a second edition. Did you have what's the major reasons for that? Do you want to talk about why you decided to do another Kickstarter for a second edition?
Right. Well, I mean, why Kickstarter is that's why, that's sort of, I don't have the spare cash lying around to fund a print run.
Sure.
Part of the reason I wanted to bring this to the second edition to Kickstarter is since I'd been playing the first edition and hearing other people playing it and, rebuilding and iterating on it and making other things, a large number of stuff became clear, it didn't work quite right, or I didn't enjoy it particularly, or thought about things that I'd learned since that could make it even better.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, another thing is that, the first tier, the first edition of Legacy hit Kickstarter when it was quite a new thing, at least for role-playing games.
Sure, yeah, no.
So there wasn't that much buzz for it, and, not many people got to hear about it, which is a shame. As a game designer, I want my games to be out there and played.
Absolutely.
So, I had a lot of changes to make to the system, which I think have made a much, much better game. I had a bunch of art that I wanted to buy for it.
Nice.
Because the first edition was assembled kind of piecemeal, as in whatever art I could afford at the time. And I now had the ability to make a lot more coherent art style with it. And I think that's really important for a game, especially
absolutely.
one that's based around sort of imagination. You need all the pieces to spark everyone's collection of imagination.
Absolutely.
And, I just sort of felt that the time was right to make a new edition and try and get that out there. And
excellent. No, I think, and it seems to be that you made the right call. Now, one thing I forgot we didn't even talk about. Can you give folks a little idea about what? Let's do a little I always say let's get a 60-second sales pitch on Legacy: Life in the Ruins. If you had a minute to tell folks what your game is about, why don't we go about that?
All right. So imagine that the old world was wiped away by some sort of apocalypse that twisted reality around itself. And your ancestors survived all that. They made it through whatever cataclysm ravaged the world. And that's a few generations down the line. And you players, you control members of different factions of survivors that have started picking themselves up out of the rubble and trying to work out how to rebuild and regrow. So it's a game about exploring the new world that the apocalypse has created, working out what it'll take to survive here, working out what it'll take to deal with the problems your family has, and start changing the world in a way that builds something new out of the rubble. And it has quite a lot broader scope than a lot of role-playing games. So you'll be zooming out to the faction level to build things or send spies or diplomats out. And then you'll be zooming into the character level to do things like explore ruins or fight monsters or strike deals. And then once you're done with a particular point in time, once you say, okay, that's the story of how we dealt with this issue, you then move the clock forward maybe a decade or a generation or a century and say, okay, here's what the world is like now. Here's how technology is advanced. Here's what new problems have created. Here's how our different factions faltered. And play continues onwards.
Excellent.
And it's
fascinating, and I'm going to tell you why I really got into when I first saw it. I got attracted. You go through Kickstarter and you see, oh, this is some really cool art, and then you dig a little deeper, and I'll tell you why I really got attached to the project in a few seconds. It's a really great looking book. It looks like a really great game. It uses the Powered by the Apocalypse mechanics, correct? And that's really hot right now. I mean, everywhere I turn, it seems like you're hearing about people playing Powered by the Apocalypse, which is great. So yeah, I think you just kind of hit right at this right time. Now, the one thing that I really liked about this game is that I'm a big sci-fi guy. I like post-apocalyptic scenarios and settings and all that. And the one thing that your game does that really kind of hit me that I don't think I've ever seen before is dealing with the post-apocalyptic setting, but in generations. Like what usually with post-apocalyptic settings, you're always worried about how you're going to survive the now.
Yeah,
exactly. That's what everybody's like. Okay, we gotta survive now. But your game, like, okay, well, you're surviving the now, but what happens later on, like that, you don't even really think about when you're playing a post-apocalyptic game usually. So I think that's really refreshing and really kind of genius. And what inspired you to come up with that idea? Because that's just I don't know any other game that does that for a post-apocalyptic game, at least.
So the post-apocalyptic things I grew up on were the old Interplay Fallout games.
Okay. Yep.
And a lot of what ended up in Legacy you can see in there. So the movement of the plot from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2, which is multiple generations down the line, and you see how everything's changed there. And then actually you go to Fallout New Vegas and you can see everything has changed even further from there. So that creates this whole sort of sweep of stories where you've got the story of the Vault Dweller, exploring to protect their vault and then moving out to be a tribe in the wasteland in Fallout 2, or that you have the NPR, not really the New California Republic, not the NPR radio station. I get that confused too much. So NCR not really having much of a foundation in Fallout 1 and then starting to get, rebuilding civilization in Fallout 2, and then by Fallout New Vegas, their sort of expansionist power trying to lay down laws on the New Vegas. So that sort of thing. There's also the Mad Max film series. It doesn't work as a series if you think that it's the same character in every film.
Right.
But if you think that it's a similar character carrying on the legacy in the 4 different films now, you can really create this story of how the wasteland has changed over generations. And that's the sort of feel I was going for with Legacy.
Yeah, no, I think I'm a big fan of Mad Max, and that's kind of one of the things that as soon as I saw your Kickstarter, I was like, oh, that kind of looks like that could fall into that setting. So that was very
well.
Cool.
I mean, that's sort of one of the reasons that a lot of the key art for the covers and such has this quite orange feel to it. Yeah, that was a big part of Fury Road for me, was its color palette.
Nice. Oh yes, such a great. I love Fury Road.
Such a good film.
That's a great movie. In fact, I think after this interview, I'm gonna go plug it. I'm gonna go put it on. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the art. Like, the art is phenomenal that you have. Like, do you want to give a shout out to your artist that's doing most of your art?
So the person who's done almost every piece of art for this is an illustrator named Tithi Luadthong from Thailand.
Oh, very cool.
And I'll be honest, a lot of it isn't stuff that I specifically asked them to make.
Really?
Yeah, it's stuff that I was looking through their gallery and I thought, well, this is great, this is great. And I thought, well, like, technically for a book, you sort of want to be able, you feel like you should be saying to the artist, I want you to make this. But if the artist has already made this perfect stuff, you just want to say, can I use that, please?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, you don't have to worry about deadlines. You just pretty much, Oh, wow.
Although the stretch goal we just hit is that I'll get about 15 more pieces of art from them. So I'm now sort of working out what I want those to be.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I saw that you got an art book, and I'm like, killing me with these add-ons. I got to get everything. I'm one of those guys, Oh,
I'm very grateful to guys like that.
I tweeted the other day. What did I tweet? I tweeted, I'm into your game when I buy 3 copies of your game, and I get I have the the PDF version. I have what's called an archive version, which I just kind of put on a shelf, put along, and I got a reading version. If I've got 3 copies of your game, I'm really into it. And actually, and I have pledged for 3 copies of your game, because you get the digital and the physical. and I pledged for an extra copy as well because I just think it's going to be a great book, and I'm so excited about it. Let's talk a little bit about. Let's talk a little bit about your partnership with Modiphius. Like that's really that's how did that come about? Because I'm gonna be straight up honest with you, James. That's how I originally came across your Kickstarter, and then I heard about it on Facebook through Modiphius, and then I was scrolling through Facebook, and this looks actually really cool, and so that's a big partner for you. How did that come about?
I mean, so, you talk about how well the Kickstarter is doing. I think if it wasn't for Modiphius, I'd probably still be trying to work to get to 8,000, though I don't know. Maybe. The game, it's a good pitch. It's a good pitch. But
I think you'd be all right, but it does help. It does help.
Yeah. So basically, I was at UK Games Expo at the start of June. I had little trestle table stalls selling books. And Chris Birch, head of Modiphius, walks by, buys a copy of Legacy from me because he wanted it in hard copy. And I talked to him about my plans for the game. And at that point, I was already, I had a draft of second edition just sitting on my laptop that I was working on during the stall. And I, told him about it, and he left his business card and said, if you want to work with us, give me an email.
Wow.
So I did, and
that's awesome.
So they actually gave me a lot of assistance setting up the Kickstarter in terms of advice on how to structure things and budgeting for reward levels. And so they're going to be handling the warehousing and distribution of the game, which is a huge lot of sweat off my brow.
Sure.
But they've been lovely to work with.
They're doing some amazing stuff.
Yeah. So one thing with previous games I've Kickstarted, you do have people coming in saying, we want to buy your game and intellectual property off you, and then we'll distribute it and you'll get this pittance. Right. But Modiphius are very different. They're they're co-publishers. So what they do is they say, we're going to be we'll handle this side of publishing and distribution for you, and you get to keep complete rights for the actual content.
Oh.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit like how in the comic book sphere, Image Comics handle it, I think, where they're it's all creator owned. They just, do the distribution and take their cut from that.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's really neat because, like I said, they're doing some great stuff, and they seem to know what they're doing because they've got the new Star Trek game out. They partnered with Free League. We love their stuff. So to have you come on board, and you're just kind of like a big stable of these great publishers that they keep signing, partnering with. It's amazing. That's a big accomplishment. I'm happy for you. Let's talk a little bit about what are some of the big changes that you made between first edition and second edition. Let's also we'll talk about that in just a second. Let's also talk about your. Sorry, I'm kind of I get like that. Right. I have a list of notes down here, and it's all my handwriting but let's talk a bit about your Kickstarter because I love talking to people about Kickstarters because I think it's just what was the biggest lesson you learned from your first Kickstarter to this Kickstarter? Because I think a lot of people have this misconception that they can just throw anything up on Kickstarter and it's just going to fund or it's not, and it's like. But there's a lot to it, and so I always like to kind of talk to people that are doing things right on Kickstarter because I think more people need to know the key elements to successful Kickstarter campaigns. What do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned from your first Kickstarter to this one?
All right, so the first lesson I'd say is a sort of a two-parter. The first part is that traditional advertising is pointless. It does not get you anything.
I love it. Yep.
With my first Kickstarter, I bought a ton of ads with Facebook and with Twitter, and I even put banner ads up on, RPG Geek and RPG.net. So, theoretically that's targeted, but it's just not worth the money. What is worth the money is word of mouth.
Absolutely.
And, that's my second part, is that you need to start promoting the game in person, as in directly to people, months before the Kickstarter launches, and that's probably going to be in the form of actually playing the game with people online and posting videos of that up, or running games of it at conventions, or even just talking about it on social media. If you sort of start talking, people who are interested will start listening.
Absolutely.
And especially if you can build up a community where you talk about it, whether that's, a G+ group or a Discord server or whatever else, you'll have people that are invested in your game and willing to sort of sell other people on it.
Absolutely.
But fundamentally, like with my first campaign, it was only about 3 weeks in that I realized that I should probably record some play of the game.
Okay,
so
sure.
People actually knew what it looked like in play. And, I think that did help eventually. But so with the second edition, I've got a 7-session actual play videos up.
They're great. I've been listening to them at work, to be honest with you. Well,
awesome.
I hope nobody's from work's watching this, but not that I've been watching them. I've been listening to them. Let's put it that way. I actually do work at work. I'm going to say that. But
so those are actually my first venture into video uploading and audio editing and that sort of thing. So fingers crossed they work all right. But it's very different running a game online and then running a game online for an audience. So got a lot to learn, I imagine. But glad to know that you've been listening. Yeah,
no, it's fun. It's great. And as soon as I saw that it was on there, I started clicking. I added to my playlist, and
awesome.
I always like to check out people playing online. It's fun.
Yeah. So having something that people can point to and say, this is what the game looks like, is great. I mean, it's why art is good, because people can just share a piece of art from your game and say, this is the sort of thing that this game is about. And the more of those you create, the better chance you'll have of being able to produce your game, promote your game.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. I totally agree. I think some of the I think word of mouth advertising. I've worked in sales before, and I know that in order to attract potential customers, word of mouth advertising is the most effective form of advertising that you can get, and it's cheap. So you just kind of put it out there and make sure that people walk away with something to talk about and that they talk positive about it. So that's great. That's great. So now let's go back to the question that I had that I saw that I wrote down here. What are some of the biggest changes that you made from first edition and second edition?
Okay, so one of the big problems that people had with first edition is that gap between the family level of play, where you're representing a faction, sending armies out and that sort of thing, and the character level of play. How you jump from one to the other, how you cleanly divide between them, when you should know whether to act on one skill or another. And we have a couple of solutions to that. The first is that there's explicit rules for the zooming in process and the zooming out process.
Okay.
So, when you spotlight a particular character or group of characters as they're going through the wasteland on a particular mission, there are now procedures that you follow to say, who else is there? Is there a way for any of the other characters to be there? Okay, cool. If someone's character is not there, build a quick character that they can play so that, they have something to do. And then say what you're here to do and go. And similarly, as you zoom back out, you say, how have things changed while you've been off having this adventure? What have the other people been up to while you've been off having that adventure, etc. So that helps sort of split the time between the two. The other thing is grounding a character within the family, is in saying how they're a part of the wider faction. So now every character has a role within that family, whether it's a leader or an agent or a rebel or an outsider. And that says what your relationship is with that family, both, generally. So a leader will be someone in charge, but also specifically. So each character type has their own thing that happens when they become one of those roles. So, for example, the sentinel, who's all about protecting people, when they become a leader, you say what you're trying to protect the family from and where they'll be safe, where you're trying to take them to. And as you move between these roles, you mark off boxes on your character sheet. And each time that you mark a box, you either increase a stat or you gain some extra ability. And once you've marked all of them, you retire the character because their story's over.
Oh, okay.
They've gone through this journey between all the sort of positions in the family, and yeah, the story's done.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, you said that this game takes place over ages, so you have you have generations that continue on. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that there are some fans of the game Pendragon, which kind of has a similar mechanic with their games where it's generational, and I think I think some of that might be of interest to those folks that have watched the channel and are fans of that system.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of Pendragon. It's a wonderful game, and it did a lot of things way before its time. But so Legacy is a bit more loose with things. So Pendragon's very much in the year by year stage. You have your seasons, and then you go through winter, and everyone dies, and eventually. But Legacy is very much more about the sort of zooming out from this point of interest and then zooming into this later time to say, okay, here's what's interesting now. And to fit with that, there are systems for saying how your fortunes rise and fall over that period.
Okay.
That's quite sort of abstract, as in based on the resources that you have as a family and the needs you have as a family, you'll make a dice roll modified by that balance, and that will determine whether mostly good things happen to you, mostly negative, or either. And the good things can be things like you establish a new place of safety and lots of people come to you for aid, or you find some great windfall. And the negative things are things like, I don't know, maybe your family was enslaved by another for a certain amount of time, or some monster came out of the wasteland and tore you up. So they're all about sort of setting plot threads for the new age when you zoom into it and saying, okay, these are the things that we're dealing with now. And each of these will affect your family stats in some way. Maybe they make it easier for you to be diplomatic with other people, or give you a lot of obligations on other people, or give you some extra resources, or all that sort of thing.
Nice. Okay.
But also there's that sort of sense of history. So your character will always be able to pull on some of the power of older characters from previous ages. So every character, when they die or retire, leave behind a relic, which you can use to call on some of their abilities.
That's really neat.
Sort of build up this library of this sort of history of champions that your family has had.
Very cool. I like that idea. Now you mentioned resources. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the resources work? That's another aspect of how does that all tie into everything? Can you give it kind of an overview of how that works?
Okay. So as a family, you'll start the game with a couple of things that you have a lot of. Maybe you have a surplus of medicine, or a surplus of defenses, or a surplus of weaponry, or whatever. And you also have 3 needs, which are things that your family desperately needs, which could be you might need a lot of recruits, or you might need some land, or you might need some morale. And a lot of what you'll be doing at the family level is trying to find ways to get more surpluses, trying to find ways to get rid of your needs, so that when time passes and ages turn and fall, etc., you have a better chance of doing well in the long run.
Okay.
So these are quite zoomed out. There's also more momentary resources. For example, there's tech, which is the old technology of the old world that you've managed to scavenge together. And this is a sort of, in the character level, it's the source of some sort of strange power that you might pick up and use momentarily, and then it's gone again. Like maybe you find a belt that can teleport you precisely 200 meters, and you have a bit of fun with that, and then it goes bust, and then you're sad. But if you can take those things back to your family, they become tech points, which you can use to boost your family moves, your family abilities on a broader scale. You also have data, which is stuff that you found out about the world. So maybe your character plugs into an old computer network, and as they're downloading things, they discover some new information about the land that they call home. And as a family, you can spend that point to add something to the map of the world that you've all drawn together. So you can say, okay, because we found this out, I'm going to put on the map that there's this bunker that we never knew about just next to my family holdings. Hooray! Or
Nice.
there's this there's an old fuel dump under our enemies, so if you can get someone there and blow it up, that'd be great. So
Oh, okay. Very cool. Very
and
nice.
finally, you've got a treaty on the other factions, which are sort of points that represent obligations that you have with them. So if you owe someone a debt, they'll have points of treaty on you that they can spend to get you to do things or lend them resources, all that sort of thing. So a lot of what you'll be doing is trading favors with each other to sort of get returned for other things.
Very cool. Oh, that all sounds really awesome, and just I love the whole big picture aspect of this game. It's just I don't think I've ever come across a game that has that built into it. Cool. Let's see. I've got a question from Luke JW. It says, "I'm interested to know what to expect with the first setting, with the 3 setting hacks. Are they mostly reskinning, or will they include new playbooks and moves to cover the setting changes?"
Okay, so as part of the Kickstarter, do a bit of introduction. Sure. We unlocked 3 so far alternate settings, which are taking the core of Legacy, that sort of faction level layer, and the long time scale sort of layer, and putting it in different directions. So we've got you're all people on a generation ship flying between the stars who have woken up a bit too early and now must try and make do in this ship that was never meant to hold you and protect you.
Nice. Okay.
We've got Free from the Yoke, which is set in a sort of low fantasy medieval kingdom where whatever foreign oppressor that was recently, ruling over all of you has recently been ousted. So you have to work out what to do now, and you've got freedom, but at what cost, etc. And thirdly, we've got Primal Pathways, which is a game about the origins of life. So every player controls a particular lineage of organisms in a sort of guardian spirit watching over them sort of way, and takes them all the way from like single cells to the beginnings of civilization.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
The question, we're changing changing as much as needs to happen to make that setting work. So for the generation ship, for example, a lot of the core Legacy families work fine there.
Okay.
And, the technology and all that sort of thing. Although we have been making some changes. Like, for example, there's one family type that in the core game is the servants of the one true faith. They follow the apocalypse or whatever revelation they got from the apocalypse, and they're very sort of culty like that.
Okay.
In Generation Ship, they revere the people that are still sleeping.
Oh.
And they sort of view those as mystically pure and try to sort of protect those at all costs. So in Generation Ship, there's not that much changing, although one thing that we are changing is giving rules for an endpoint to your game, because eventually the generation ship is going to arrive somewhere.
Sure.
And so we'll have things to what happened there. But, other games are going to change a lot too. Like, so in Free from the Yoke, you don't have technology lingering from the old world, from the world before. What you have is magic, which is, dangerous and unpredictable. So you're still seeking out magic and rituals in the world, but the way in which they're dangerous are different than the way that technology is dangerous.
Okay.
And finally, Primal Pathways changes things a whole ton.
I was going to say, that's got to change it totally.
Yeah. So, for one thing, what you'll be doing in the game is instead of finding technology, you'll be finding traits in the environment from other animals or organisms that you accumulate into your species. And once you've accumulated enough of these to unlock the next evolutionary step, that's when ages turn and you say, okay, we were little sort of grub monsters, now we're big fish monsters or what have you. But that also has things like so the setup for that one is these guardian spirits watching over a lineage. They're possessing a particular member of the species at any one time. So there'll be rules for why that member of the species is particularly important, and how to play the other members of the species, because those might not be able to talk, they might not be intelligent, you know.
Right.
Which creates different challenges.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see how you play that.
Yeah. So I'm quite excited to see what the guy who's writing that comes up with.
So are those have not even been started, or they have been started?
Oh, they've been started.
Okay.
I have sort of overview documents for all of them that sort of list what sort of family or character types there are and what sort of rules changes they're expecting to make.
Excellent.
The generation ship one has already entered playtesting, so
nice.
That's going well.
Yeah, that sounds. I'm a big, like I said, I'm a big sci-fi guy. That one really kind of sounds like a lot of fun.
There's a book I read recently, actually. Children of Time is a really good book. It sort of focuses on. Well, so the idea is that the human civilization that spanned the galaxy and was wonderful dies. It sort of dies in the prologue.
Okay.
And the story focuses two strands. The first strand is a generation ship of humans who have pulled themselves back up from essentially the rubble to make a ship to flee the poisoned ruins of Earth, searching for a new home. So sort of looking back at them as they come out of cryosleep and look around and then go back into cryosleep. And the other strand is the race of uplifted animals that human scientists were in the process of creating as their civilization fell. Sort of going from the very first sort of sparks of intelligence all the way up to huge civilization.
Right.
Although the scientists were trying to uplift monkeys as they sort of seeded this planet with intelligence boosting creature, nanomachines or whatever.
Okay.
Sadly, the monkeys died on re-entry, so what they ended up uplifting in the end was spiders.
Oh my god! Really?
So that's a really good book, because the way it builds this sort of spider civilization out of sort of, in some ways, that is very understandable and comparable to humanity, but in other ways completely alien. It's a really good look.
I'll have to check that out. It sounds awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So that's very much the sort of story that you could tell with Legacy.
Sure.
Because, you know, especially if you combine Generation Ship with maybe the Uplifted Children of Humanity, which is one of the other family playbooks.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I like how your game in general is just really, it can encompass a lot of different. If you're a fan of sci-fi, it can kind of mold it to different games. Like I can think like Planet of the Apes. I can think of Mad Max. I can think of quite a few different movies that you could kind of fit into that system.
Yeah. So a large part of writing Legacy for me was that the bit I really enjoy whenever I'm running a game of it, I mean, I enjoy a lot of it, but the bit I really enjoy is the character creation setup, where you build this world together, where you work out what it was, and then you ruin it, and then you say what's there in the ruins. And I tried to make sure that was pretty open for the group. They can make whatever sort of apocalypse they wanted, but the rules sort of guide the procedure for building that, guided you towards something that would work with the Legacy rules.
Yes. Yeah, I think it does a great job, just based on what I've seen so far. Let's talk. We've talked a little bit about a couple of the stretch goals already. Let's talk about the Kickstarter itself. Where are my notes here? Okay, let's talk about the least expensive. If somebody were interested in they're watching this video, they check out your Kickstarter. Before they check out the Kickstarter, what's the least amount that they can pledge to get a copy of your game?
Well, I mean, the least amount of pledge someone could pledge would be $0.
Well,
by finding the quick start that we have linked on the.
James, it's like, you should just come on every single. That was smooth, man. That was great. Yeah. I have that on my notes, but I was gonna give. That was after we had gone through all the pledges. That's kind of what I was gonna go with. But man, you totally read my mind. You should be on my stream more often.
Yeah, next Kickstarter maybe.
So it's great.
Is a little document. It's about 20 pages that I put together to basically. It's done most of the work of setting up a game for you. Okay. So the world's mostly there. You tweak the map a bit as you make characters, and you put things down on it. Well, but it creates this sort of setup situation where you're these colonists stranded on a planet after its space elevator was destroyed by giant monsters that came out of the jungle and destroyed everything. But you're different factions, obviously. There's the people who built the space elevator. There's the cult that now worships the jungle that you all are surrounded by. There's the people who follow the instructions of a crazed AI in space that occasionally fires down giant robots to fight monsters with.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And so the idea is that it's sort of gives you a taste of the legacy rules of this sort of faction level thing, and gives you a chance to play through a pivotal moment in this colony's history as they've just realized that one of the monsters can actually be killed, and where do they take that from there.
Okay, great.
So
and yeah, it's great. I've got that on my my drive-through review library, and awesome. Yeah, I have not. I checked out your preview of your second edition book. I have not checked that one out. I will admit to that, but I'm really excited to share that with some of the guys that I'm going to be seeing at convention here in a couple weeks.
Awesome. So to get back to pledging.
Yes, so, pledging.
Next up, let's see. There's $1. At $1, you get you can have a look at the current draft of the game.
Right. And it's quite a bit. Like that's not like that's more. I forget how many pages it is, but it's a big file.
I think it's currently about 260 pages.
Yeah.
There's no art in it, but if you just want to have a look and assess if it's the sort of game for you, go ahead. In terms of what will actually get me a final copy of the game, next up is £8. At £8, let's see how many dollars that is.
Yeah.
Which is $10. You'll get the full PDF once it's launched.
Which again, it's 200 something. It's 260 pages already without art. So even at $10, it's a great buy.
Yeah. At $15, you get the PDF plus everything, all the digital things we unlocked over the course of the campaign. So that's the 3 different settings I talked about, some audio tracks you can play to set the mood, the first edition PDFs, a whole bunch of stuff.
Sure.
As well as getting £10 off the physical game if you want to buy it later.
Nice.
Then £30 or $40 roughly.
Yep.
Gets you the hardback book, which is great. We started the campaign with just it as a softback, which then upgraded to a hardback, which is lovely. So that gets you the hardback, all the PDFs and digital content, some postcards, some posters.
Which is great because, like I said, the art is amazing in this book. So anything that adds more art to this project is just, I'm all in favor of.
And what I definitely recommend people do if they back at that level is that they then spend maybe the extra £10 more to get the deluxe edition.
That's what I did.
Well, do you want to tell the people why
it gives you a nice foil cover, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a foil embossed cover and a really nice slipcase, like a hard slipcase.
Yep.
That's going to be my archive copy right there. That's going in my that's not my reading one. That's I'm excited about that. That was great.
Yeah. And if you want to give me more money, you can pledge more to get dice or dry erase character sheets or your own custom playbook, although all of those are gone now.
But there's one where you can actually you write them like a setting book or
yeah.
They want to give they really want to go crazy.
Yeah. So like the quick start I was talking about earlier, if you're back at that level, which I'm not going to be unhappy if you do, we will write whatever post-apocalyptic setting you want. We'll write it up as a setting for the game that people can drop characters into and start playing as.
That's great.
So
imagine that.
I hope someone picks it up because that'd be really fun to do.
That would be, absolutely.
Oh, and as you were saying, we just unlocked a art book for the game, which is a 50-page coffee table sort of thing that is lovely, and we'll have all the art from the game in it, along with little sort of me discussing, why I chose this particular piece of art, what I think it says to me, that sort of thing.
That's awesome. I like that. I like little art. I like art books, and I know Free League has done that with a couple of their games, or they work with
Simon Cullen.
Yeah, he's just done. Yeah, I think that's. I don't know. I didn't want to butcher the. I'll let you pronounce it, because I knew I was gonna probably get it wrong.
You're a wiser man than I.
But yeah, his art is amazing, and that's kind of what reminds me of your artist, is that similar kind of that style. So I'd love to. I think I might have to just give you more money and get the art book now, and I tell you now, are you going to have the pledge? Do you do like pledge? You do a pledge manager after the campaign, and people can, like, so if they don't pledge as much as they want to during the campaign, they can. Are you going to have add-ons in the pledge manager afterwards?
Definitely.
That they can. Awesome.
I mean, there'll also be the ability for people who didn't pledge during the Kickstarter to jump in then.
Late backers.
They may not have as good a deal as people pledging during the Kickstarter did.
Yep.
I'm still working that out.
That makes sense. Yeah, no, it's really great. If you, how many more days do you have on this Kickstarter? It's less than
10 days.
I was gonna say it's less than 2 weeks. If it really goes crazy over these next 10 days, what would you like to? What if you could do anything? I had someone ask this in a session before, and I love the question. What's your wildest dream for Legacy? Like, what if you could have, if you got this crazy amount of funding, like, what was one thing that you would love to do with your game and with your system? See, I told you I was going to keep it light and easy, but look at that, I stumped you with one.
So, I mean, there is one thing that I would love to be able to do, but unfortunately, I'm under an NDA for that. So,
okay.
Let me think. So, I really think that, well, the legacy book that I'm producing, I'd like to think it's sort of everything you need to play through the legacy concept.
Sure.
Like, I mean, my co-author does have some ideas for some other supplements about maybe building out the game into a more hopeful sort of place. Like, where do you... Well, he has 2 supplements about sort of exiting the campaign. One for taking it in a more hopeful direction. So, like, what happens when you're no longer in ruins? What happens once you've built the glorious civilization? Now you've taken back to the stars or what have you. He also has one for what happens if the apocalypse happens again.
Oh, okay.
So that's really cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I would just like to get more people writing stuff for Legacy or whatever. Like,
yep.
So, I mean, I never expected that this game would do as well as it did on Kickstarter. So one thing I'm really trying to do now is get as many sort of friends and fellow writers as I can on board and making their own stuff. Like, that's why I did the alternate settings. I'd like other people to share in,
absolutely.
The bounty.
I love.
I mean, also, I'd like to quit my job, and become a full-time game designer.
Absolutely.
Hey, that saying.
Hey, I've got a friend that I have on this channel quite a bit, and he was able to do it. So I love it when people get to do a job that they love. Like, that to me is just. The majority of people work in jobs that they just can't, they do it because they pay the bills, because they, to see somebody, actually accomplish working and loving what they do, like, that to me is just, I get excited for that, even if it's not me, so I hope that becomes a reality for you. And that would be awesome, because, I think that's what life is all about, is doing something that you love.
Yeah, that's cool.
Sorry, that's there we go.
No,
I would love. Yeah, no, I love seeing people, especially in the industry. Everybody thinks in this gaming industry that, like, I think that's like one of the biggest misconceptions, that the game designers and the publishers and everything, they're making tons of money. Like, that's not the case. You know, a lot of people are doing this in their spare time. They're doing it after hours, after their 9-to-5 jobs, or, and they're doing it because they love the hobby. They love the communities. They love, what they do. And they're just lucky to, break even on some of this stuff. And so, if people can do that full time, I'm just get excited. And every time I hear that somebody is, especially somebody that I've either featured on this channel or that, I know works for a game publisher or freelances, and they can go full time, I get excited for them. And I'm like, yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think there's only like a few dozen or so people actually making a full-time job in the industry.
Yeah.
And I imagine a lot of them work for Wizards or Paizo.
I would assume so. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see here. Let's talk. Well, before we sign off, I won't keep you much longer, but let's talk about UFO Press just for a little bit. You've got some other games besides Legacy. I'm going to tell everybody, if you are interested in checking out UFO Press, do you want to give your website that?
Sure.
That you have?
I will just check it in my browser to make sure I get it right. Yeah, it's just UFOpress, one word, .co.uk.
Nice. And you have Legacy, and then you have Wizards Aren't Gentlemen?
Yeah. So my previous Kickstarter, so I did Legacy, then this one, then Legacy 2, was for a game system we've started calling the hijink system, which are basically games that are about creating a rules-light, funny storytelling experience with a group of people with no prep, no GM required, fitting in a deck of cards.
Nice, okay.
So the Kickstarter first was for What Ho World, which is our sort of Jeeves and Wooster themed one. So lots of 1920s hijinks there. And we did well enough with that to expand out into Wizards Aren't Gentlemen, which is a sort of Terry Pratchett-y style, misbehaving wizards sort of style thing. And yeah, so both of those, the idea is that you grab a deck of cards each that represents your character, and that'll give you relationships to the other characters and special abilities you can call on. You'll have a couple of things that you're trying to do over the course of the session. So, I don't know, for What Ho World, it might be that you want to get out of an unfortunate engagement, or for Wizards Aren't Gentlemen, it might be that you want to be the first to reach the nameless plateau or something like that. And you take it in turns to be the focus of the story, play through a scene with the other characters, either providing opposition as their characters or, incidental characters there to add color. And the idea is that the game rules take most of the role of the GM. So they manage spotlight time, they make sure every character has a subplot that develops, they make sure that nobody's dominating the story. And and they're very fun. I've had people say that they've been able to pick up a game of it and play through in about an hour of their own fun story. And
excellent.
I also I love entering role-playing game design contests. So Legacy started as an entrant for a Apocalypse World design contest.
Oh, neat. Okay.
Written in the course of a month back in September 2013. And since then, I've entered a lot of them. So I have a few of my games from that. There's Ultra Normal Encounters, which is a storytelling game where everyone has been abducted by aliens. And they all remember the experience a little bit differently. And now they're all being interrogated by FBI. And so you take it in turns to be the person being interviewed. And you're telling the FBI agents, yes, they took me up in their tractor beam and showed me Alpha Centauri. And the FBI agents can ask you questions and cast doubt on you. So everyone else is always playing the FBI agents. And they ask you questions and flesh out your story. And at any point, you can toss it over to one of the other players and say, they were there, they'll back me up. And then that player has a choice of whether they back you up and add extra details to your story or contradict you or say, that's flat out wrong. And so you go around together and eventually sort of build this story of what happens somewhere in the middle of everyone else.
Okay. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It is great. I love it a lot. Also, a game I finished very recently for the Game Chef competition.
Okay.
Which is where you're given a group. It's a bit like Iron Chef. You're given a particular theme and a set of ingredients, and you have to try and make a game that uses those.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
You should check out Game Chef. It's a great competition. So this year, for example, the theme was borders. So you had to make a game that's about crossing borders or borders between things or liminal states. And the ingredients were cut, yarn, smoke, and echo.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
What the heck?
So the game I made for that was one called Weave, where you are initiates in a magic tradition focused around fabric and clothing.
Okay. That sounds interesting.
You just completed your apprenticeship and you're being sent out into the world to get a taste of the different cultures out there before, committing to a life of monastic study of the mysteries, etc. But as your magic is based on, the symbolic meaning of garments, etc. As you travel the world, you'll come to a new place and they'll have some, interesting thing that they wear that means something to that culture. And so you as initiates, you spend your time, well, sometimes you'll be spending your time, making money for your journey or making friends, but you'll also be spending time learning more about this culture and what it values and what its history is. And at the end of your stay there, if you think you've understood them enough, you can try and summon that power, that sort of cultural resonance into a power of your own to take going forward. But it's got a lot of these questions of, how do you know whether you've learned enough about a culture that you're using their stuff appropriately? How do you know that you're not damaging the culture by taking stuff on? So, I'm quite happy with that game. It got selected as a finalist. So
very cool. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'll find out tomorrow who the actual winner is. So
nice. Well, good luck with that. Good luck. Yeah. I hope they announce that it's you. That sounds very, very awesome. Do you have anything else that you've been working on that you have any, like, I know it's probably pretty early and you don't want to give too much away, but you have a couple other projects that you're kind of on the back burner?
So one that I've been working on and off for the past year or so is a game called Ghost Ship. Where
I saw that on the website. Yeah.
So basically, the idea of Ghost Ship is it's in a few centuries into the future, and sort of space travel is just opening out again. But the problem with space is it's very dangerous and very boring. So a lot of people there's very huge difficulty getting people to actually man the missions to go out there.
Mm-hmm.
At which point the players come in, because the players are sort of brain scans that were made of people before their death, so that people could, I don't know, talk to their dead grandpa again, or maybe they're a journalist who people wanted to be able to hear their stories from again. But you've got this.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Are you sure you're not like a science fiction writer? Because all these ideas that you throw out, I'm just like, oh my god, I would read that as a book. These are great. Just your mind works awesome. I just want to say that. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm sitting here. I'm like, oh my god, this should be a movie or something.
Yeah. So a lot of that was. A lot of the core idea was sort of drawn from Alistair Reynolds' Revelation Space series, where you have these sort of personality uploads that aren't quite perfect, and sort of there's this huge scandal. But that's a great series. But any case, so you are now sitting in these sort of virtual retirement homes, and not quite people as far as the law is concerned.
Okay.
And there's this opportunity to make a new life for yourself up in space. Because corporations need people to man these spaceships, and you're close enough. So it's sort of about how you find a new life for yourself up in space, how that sort of can erode away your memories of life before, and how sort of the stresses of that can affect you. And also how sort of as you make these grand journeys of decades or whatever across the solar system, how the solar system changes around you.
Yeah.
But
That sounds awesome.
that's a bit on the back burner at the moment because I'm having a bit of difficulty reconciling the ghost side of things, the sort of personality and the memories and holding on to that, and the ship side of things, the sort of traveler or Firefly-esque, actual doing space missions and having fun out in space.
Oh.
So I'm still sort of testing interfaces between those to make it all a sort of coherent thing.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, and I can't once you get a playable version, once you're you get if you're gonna go with Kickstarter on it, let me know because that sounds great. It's just so out there, but yet I love it. It's just it's my type of genre for setting. Now, what's the other question? I was gonna ask you one other thing. Now that game is, you said, I think I saw a little description about it. It's GM-less, right? You don't need a GM for that game, or am I thinking about another game?
You might be thinking about another one. Ghost Ship, it has a GM at the moment.
Okay. I must have been thinking about. I must have, I know one of them said that there was not a GM, but.
So, What Ho World and Wizards Aren't Gentlemen don't have a GM.
Okay, that's the one.
And Ultra Normal Encounters doesn't have a GM.
Okay. Well, no, it sounds like you've. Like I said, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's got so many cool ideas and so many cool. I can't wait to see more and more stuff from you later on down the road, and I'm glad that you're having such a huge success with Legacy. And if anybody is interested in checking out Legacy Second Life Among the Ruins Second Edition, I did put the link in the description of this video. I also put the link to the quick start in the video, so feel free to check out both of those and put a comment down below in the comments and let us know that you picked it up or that you played the quick start. And yeah, no, I think that's about all I had for you, James. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we sign off?
Let's see. If you are interested in the sort of ideas or mini games that I've been putting together, I do also have a Patreon where I'm putting out one free micro RPG a month.
Oh, so nice.
If you want to look at patreon.com/UFO Press, I think that's where it is.
Okay.
Let me just check that. Yep, that's correct. I've just put up this month's free game, which is a game about one person trying to flee some sort of terrible creature and a terrible creature trying to catch him.
Nice.
So it's quite a sort of antagonistic player versus player sort of thing, but quite fun.
And you put one of those out a month, huh?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, at least that's the goal.
Yep. No, that's great. That's great. All right, so
yeah, it was great to be on your show.
Well, thank you again for joining me tonight. And I know it's kind of late there, so I really appreciate it, especially with having a little one. That definitely factors into a lot of decisions in your free time. Thank you, everybody that watched this far and that joined us. Make sure to join me on Wednesday night as we have our Wednesday night show where we meet the Vermont Comic-Con D&D live players that we're going to be hosting. We'll be doing a live game from Vermont Comic-Con this year, and we're going to be using our Wednesday night show to introduce everybody to the players and the GMs and the people behind the game. I hope you all can join me for that. I guess that's going to do it for me for tonight. I want to thank James again for coming on, and say congratulations on his big success on Kickstarter. And this has been Victory Condition Gaming, because winning shouldn't be the only victory condition when you get to the table. We'll see you on the next video, folks. Bye.